Wir haben nichts Neues bekommen, ne, weil wir so scheiße waren. Gericht eröffnet.
Let's begin with a basic explanation of the class trial.
Ist es laut genug?
So, your votes will determine the results. If
ist
you
leise,
can
laut,
figure
zu
out
laut,
who
zu
done
leise.
it, then
Okay.
only they will receive punishment. But if you pick the wrong one, then I'll punish everyone besides the blackened, and the one that deceived everyone else will graduate. Okay, well, I'll leave the rest up to you.
Well then, let's discuss the specifics of the victim. First, we need to clarify who exactly the unidentified victim is.
Ja, Folien, das freut mich. Ganz viel Liebe zurück.
It's Kyoko. There's no other explanation.
Was, Lisa lauter? Leiser, lauter. Ach, och.
But Kyoko's standing right there.
Okay, Tuck ist
No,
leise.
that's a ghost.
But she has legs and stuff.
Also keine Streamerin.
Well, that's just because she's like the latest evolution in ghost technology.
Klar.
There's a limit to how much ridiculousness I can tolerate.
Okay. So I just have to prove that the corpse isn't Kyoko, right?
Easy.
Then let's compare Kyoko's traits to the traits of the dead body.
Her traits?
Ein wichtiger Charakterzug Kyokos beweist, dass sie nicht die Leiche sein kann.
I got it!
Die Stimme
I'm
der
talking
Leiche
about her
passt nicht.
gloves. They'll give us some insight into the mystery. I'm sure of it.
In that case, I think it would be helpful if someone explained why she actually wears those gloves.
And would you happen to know the answer?
In fact, Monokuma told me. Apparently you have scars on your hands you don't want anyone to see.
Oh, you know, now that I think about it, the corpse wasn't wearing any gloves, right?
They probably just got burnt up in the explosion.
Ich glaube, Waffelstummel spielt irgendwie Crusader Kings oder so. Ich glaube, Waffelstummel hat gerade eine Inzestfamilie am Laufen. Ich musste extra Crusader Kings davor sagen, damit ich das danach sagen konnte, weil ohne dass ich Crusader Kings gesagt hätte, wäre die Aussage ganz schön komisch gekommen. Ist so denn? Ja, deswegen geht er einem schon von Anfang an auf die Nerven. Ach, wach werden. Das stimmt nicht. Du hast eine Dynastie gegründet. Ich weiß es.
I'm not convinced. The ghost is just trying to fool us all.
Nie im Leben ist es auch nur im geringsten möglich, dass die Leiche tatsächlich Kyoko sei. Aber wenn ich es nicht beweisen kann, kommen wir nicht voran. Welcher Beweis wird ihn überzeugen? Ich bin kein Österreicher, wow.
That Kyoko there is just a ghost.
Impossible.
Okay, then prove it. Prove she's not a ghost.
The dead body wasn't wearing gloves.
Ups,
They got burnt
Ich wollte-
up in the explosion.
ich wollte eigentlich Rechtsklick machen.
Then she was wearing gloves before the explosion.
Well, yeah, she must have been, because that corpse is absolutely Kyoko.
This entire discussion is idiotic.
Ich habe schon wieder Steuerung übrigens gedrückt.
That Kyoko,
Impossible.
okay, then prove it.
The dead body wasn't wearing gloves.
They got burnt up in the explosion.
Then she was wearing gloves before the explosion.
Well, yeah.
She must have been wearing gloves.
Ach, die Hand, auch die Fingernägel. Von wegen, dass die Fingernägel zu lang sind für Handschuhe. So, wenn das jetzt... Okay, stopp. Wenn das jetzt das ist, was... Wenn das jetzt das ist, was er mir damit erzählen will,
Kyoko
das ist
there
eine
is just a
absolute Lüge.
ghost.
Dann kaufst du dir halt einfach längere Finger bei den Handschuhen.
Okay,
Absoluter
then prove it.
Schwachsinn.
Prove she's not a ghost.
The
Wehe.
dead body wasn't.
They got burnt up in the explosion.
Then she was wearing gloves before.
Well,
Yeah, she must have been wearing gloves.
No, that's wrong.
Er war für stumm durch. Normalerweise spielst du eine
There's no
Crusader
way
Kings.
the corpse was wearing gloves.
Alles gut, war für stumm durch. Alles gut. Ich mache ja nur Spaß. Damit Lurker sich nicht so Sorgen machen muss, weißt du?
Whoever it was, they were wearing fake nails, remember? I imagine trying to wear gloves over nails like that
Seifert.
would have been a pretty big pain. Besides, Kyoko wears gloves to hide her hands, right?
Stopp, Fudin. Also wir wissen, dass sie immer draußen Handschuhe hat. Aber ganz ehrlich, überleg dir mal, warum solltest du dir ein Popo- oder Intim-Piercing oder Popo-Tattoo machen? Das zeigst du meistens draußen auch nicht. Weißt du? Deswegen, warum nicht für sich selbst die Fingernägel? Ja, deswegen, Leute, ich möchte ja nicht, dass du dir Sorgen machst.
It'd be pretty weird for someone who's self-conscious about their hands to wear fake nails, don't you think?
Warum? Gerade wenn man mit seinen Händen unzufrieden ist, macht es doch Sinn, dass man es verbessert.
Jeez, man, you don't know women, huh? They're complicated like that.
Ja, Fudin, hat er.
If anyone doesn't know women, it's you.
Well, Kyoko, any thoughts?
These gloves were custom made to the size of my hands to make sure they don't interfere with my daily life. If I wore fake nails, the gloves wouldn't fit properly.
Außer sie wären davor angepasst an deine Finger. Also manchmal, ne?
Then that's that. The dead body doesn't belong to Kyoko.
Which should have been obvious since she's standing right here.
Ja, ja, ja. Danke. Danke, Byakuya.
Okay, so then, who's the real victim? First, we need to figure that out.
That's the first thing I said. You're the one who's been dragging us around in circles.
Da hat er recht. Bevor wir weitermachen können, müssen wir das Opfer identifizieren. Jetzt beginnt es wirklich. Ich bin sofort bei euch, ne? Ich muss hier nur ein bisschen aufpassen, sonst ist mein Monokuma-Anzug gleich orange. Springt gleich an diese Handtuch. Handtattoo meine ich.
If Kyoko really is still alive, then who died?
There's gotta be some way to figure it out. I don't think so. The face was scorched beyond recognition. And there wasn't any description in the Monokuma file. Well, if we can't identify the body...
Then there's nothing else we can do, right?
Monokuma Wonsia.
If Kyoko really is still alive,
Von den Sterblichen entgegen.
then who died?
There's gotta be
Tordu Warp
some
würde
way
ich
to
mir auch nochmal
figure it
angucken,
out.
tatsächlich.
I don't think so. The face was scorched beyond recognition. And there wasn't any description. Well, if we can't identify the body...
Then there's nothing else we can do,
Mann,
right?
ich drücke immer die falsche Taste. Das kotzt mich so an. Kann ich Tastaturbelegung ändern?
If Kyoko really... Then who died?
There's gotta be some... And there wasn't any description. Well, if we can't identify the body...
No, that's wrong. There was one clue left behind that we can use to identify the body.
What? For real? If you're lying, you'll die a cruel and unusual death.
A cruel and unusual death. This I gotta see.
She's just being stupid. Ignore them, Makoto. Tell us what you're talking about.
Ja, natürlich. Mach ich.
The key to figuring out who it was is the tattoo on the back of her hand.
Genau.
Oh, yeah. The design's pretty strange, huh? Is this a dog? Her master must have made her get it. To be like, you're my bitch.
Seriously? They really did something that
Shoko, nicht
humiliating?
jeder ist so dumm wie du.
No, that's not it. The identity of the victim is hidden within that tattoo.
Oh, really?
Wenn man das Tattoo mit anderen Informationen verbindet, sollten wir sofort wissen, wer gestorben ist.
I got it! The Fenrir Mercenary Corps. That's the name of the military group Mukuro Ikusaba belonged to.
Okay, so
To show that they're a member of the team, each soldier that joins the squad would get a tattoo representing Fenrir somewhere on their body.
Fenrir?
Was repräsentiert Fenrir? Wolf. Wow, ernsthaft? Ernsthaft? Warum machst du überhaupt die Sachen weg? Also,
Now I understand.
das 4 Buchstaben und
The
2 Buchstaben sind
representation
schon
of
da. Mach
Fenrir
auf.
is a wolf.
Fenrir, the wolf of Ragnarok. It's from Norse mythology. A huge, world-ending wolf beast.
Verstehe ich locker.
He's the child of the trickster god Loki, and a female giant.
Man, after all this time, we finally got a glimpse of the literary all-star.
Wordle, von dem alle reden. Ja,
Tattoo.
Golf.
That means
Rolf?
Exactly. The body we found had a tattoo of a wolf, which means that person must have once belonged to Fenrir. So it must have been Mukuro.
What?
Wordle Light, ja, das trifft
Hold
eher.
on. Isn't she the one that was behind this whole thing?
You sound surprised, but you're absolutely right. Yes, indeed. The trial this time is to solve the murder of Mukuro Ikusaba.
What? Are you saying the mastermind is dead? And now we have to have a cool-ass trial?
No. It means we were wrong in thinking that Mukuro was the mastermind at all.
But I mean, being the ultimate despair seems like a pretty mastermindy title to me.
Maybe we shouldn't have been thinking of her as the ultimate despair in the first place. After all, looking at her profile, I didn't see anything that would fit such a description.
Hat recht?
All it said was that she was the ultimate soldier. If I remember correctly, that other information came from Kyoko. That's what you told Makoto, right?
So that means Kyoko got it wrong?
And
Schlag
who
kurz am
was she?
Wasser. Träum was Schönes.
Who was Mukuro Ikusaba? She's been gone this whole time? And when she finally turns up, she gets killed. Usually when there's a scene where an important character dies, it has a lot more detail.
So you're saying she wasn't an important character? Which would mean she was the same as us, just another participant.
Then who's the real mastermind?
It must have been the Hope's Peak Academy headmaster after all.
No, the headmaster has nothing to do with it.
But how can we trust that? We already know your information about Mukuro was wrong.
My information was not wrong.
Okay. We're in the middle of a trial right now. Figuring out who killed Mukuro is first and foremost. Please limit all future prattle, chatter, and chit-chat as much as possible.
Fine. Uncovering the identity of the mastermind will have to wait. But remember this. No matter what happens, we will find out who you really are. I stake my family name on it.
Boah, krass.
I have officially decided to completely ignore all such attempts at provocation. Now then, just so nobody's confused, let me state this one more time for the record. The reason we're having a class trial is because a murder among the students has taken place. Hammer that point straight into your big ol' brains!
What you're saying is that both the victim and the culprit are part of the student body?
Then, one of us killed Mukuro?
Wait, no! There's a chance that there's some mystery 17th person who's been hiding all along!
Nope. There are only 16 students in total that have been taking part in these events.
Seriously? Then one of us killed Mukuro?
Who did it? Who's the killer this time?
Get a hold of yourself. We've already narrowed down the list of possible suspects.
Huh?
Was meinst du damit?
I'm sure you realize who I'm talking about, right, Makoto? Who the evidence points to?
Es kann nur 2 Verdächtige geben.
I got it! You've narrowed it down to Kyoko and me, right?
Why
Ja,
do you
was
say
schon
that?
durch. Ja, das
Allow me to
vergisst man
explain.
schnell.
Just after nighttime last night, I went to the garden, so I can confirm that at that point, there was no dead body there. So, the murder must have taken place after I left the garden. However, Hiro, Toko, Hina, and I were in the gym the entire time.
The gym?
That's right. The 4 of us were there trying to dismantle Monokuma. The whole time, we were very careful not to go
glaub
anywhere
auch.
alone. We even went to the bathroom in pairs.
Ich war's. Ich geb's zu.
All of which is to say, the 4 of us all have alibis. The only ones without alibis
Are me and Makoto. That's why you're able to narrow down the list of suspects.
exactly so.
Die einzigen Verdächtigen sind also nur Kyoko und ich. Verdammt, so darf es nicht bleiben. Irgendwie muss ich meinen Namen reinwaschen.
I have something I'd like to say regarding the whole alibi thing.
Are you thinking of raising an objection?
Well, before that, I just want to try and get a better idea of what time the murder took place. Doing that might reveal some kind of clue.
Whatever you want. Somebody go ahead and help him out.
Me and Byakuya can both confirm that the body wasn't in the garden at... Well, it was after nighttime for sure. I'd say it must have been around 10 o'clock.
Ja.
So the murder must have happened after 10 p.m.
Then I guess we can say the time frame for the murder was between then and when we found the body? Oh, but what time did we find the body?
The one who saw the body first was Toko, right? And she went to go get the pickaxe.
Wann wurde die Leiche entdeckt? 9 Uhr.
I got it! The body must have been discovered at 9 a.m., since that's when Toko went to get the pickaxe.
Ich lasse das jetzt einfach durchlaufen. Ich habe keine Lust, immer 3-mal alles vorzulesen. Ich bin ganz ehrlich. Sie soll die Spitzhacke holen, soll spätestens um 9:01 Uhr wieder zurück sein, ist hingegangen.
It had to be around then.
Fertig.
So we can be totally sure the murder happened sometime between 10 at night and 9 in the morning.
For me, I was already asleep before nighttime hit, so I don't have an alibi after 10 o'clock. But I'm sure I met up with everyone else before 9 this morning.
We ran into each
Ist aber auch
other in
lang
the
her, ja.
dining hall, right? That was around...
Nö.
Oh
Seh ich nicht.
yeah! Right around 7:30. I remember checking right before I went in, so I'm totally sure about it.
Which means from 10 p.m. to 7:30 a.m., you don't have an alibi.
Der Mord geschah von 22 bis 9 Uhr. Ich habe von 22 bis 7:30 Uhr kein Alibi. Die Diskussion beginnt. Ja. Ich weiß aber auch, was das Problem ist. Also, wie kann ich beweisen, dass ich trotzdem nicht war? Ich weiß nicht, was ich machen muss. So, vielleicht kann ich noch das Zeitintervall einschränken. Ja, ich weiß noch was. Jetzt mach mal. Irgendwas im Garten muss mir helfen können. Ja, jetzt los. Ich bin ready.
We've established a time frame for the murder. It took place somewhere between 10 o'clock at night and 9 o'clock in the morning.
Yep, and Makoto doesn't have an alibi for most of that time.
Yeah, from 10 o'clock to 7:30.
Shoot!
Hä? Aber... Hä?
We've established a time frame for the murder.
It took place somewhere between
9 o'clock in the morning.
Yep. And
Yeah, from to
Oh.
7:30.
That's more than enough time to commit murder.
I should.
So Makoto, if you have any...
Objections, now would be the time.
Hä, aber das
We've
stimmt doch.
established a time frame for the...
It took place.
Somewhere between 10 o'clock.
No, that's wrong. Actually, the murder couldn't have happened anywhere near 10 o'clock. It had to have taken place way later.
Ja, und deswegen wollte ich sagen, okay, hey, ab 7:30 Uhr hätte die Leiche da liegen können. Ja, weil da die Sprenglage...
And what makes you say that?
Because of the sprinklers in the garden. The sprinklers are set to go off right at 7:30 every morning, right? So if the body had been in the garden before 7:30, then it should have been completely soaked.
Oh, hold on. I remember this part perfectly. The body was wet. Dripping wet, in
Ja.
fact.
Sorry, Toko, but you're wrong.
I'm wrong?
Oh,
How?
ich hab sie beschüttet,
Are
übergossen.
you saying only the mouth down south was wet? How dare you spew such indecent words?
No, I'm saying that the body was wet, but not because of the sprinklers.
What do you mean? By denying the sprinkler, are you trying to deny my entire existence?
Der südliche Mund.
Man, you're totally wacko.
If you really think it wasn't the sprinkler, you'd better tell us why!
So sieht's aus. Ich muss beweisen, dass die Sprinkler nichts mit ihrer Nässe zu tun haben. Mit ihrer Nässe. Wow. Ein bestimmter Beweis sollte genügen. Wenn wir den Körper in seinem jetzigen Zustand begutachten, sollte es klar werden. Oh, Kugelkrieg, ernsthaft?
I admit nothing. I hate you. No, no, no! I don't know anything! Hold on! Are you trying to blame me? I admit nothing. I hate you. No, no, no! I don't know anything! Hold on! Are you trying to blame me? I admit nothing. Are you trying to blame me? I admit nothing. I hate you. No, no,
Hey, ich bin
no!
doch.
I don't know anything! How can you say it wasn't the sprinkler?
Oh, ich kann nichts ausführen.
This
Okay.
should prove it.
Das ist furchtbar. Mozart-Kugeln ran. Die machen wir fertig. Ich habe keine mehr, Leute.
Just remember what the body was like after the explosion, and you'll see why it wasn't the sprinklers.
Sie alle gegessen.
The top half of the body was wet, yes, but the bottom half was completely dry. If the sprinklers got the body wet, shouldn't the whole body have been wet?
So they only got the top wet? The bottom was completely dry? What a brutal maniac! I'm so sick of her.
Let's just move on.
Also Jill ist mir übrigens
The
lieber.
reason only the
Jack.
top half was wet was because... While the body was still on fire, I doused it with water. But only the part on fire, the top half.
Ja, eigentlich ist ihre Mitte am Brennen.
Oh, then I guess the sprinklers
Und
really
den
did.
Untenstoff. Wow.
So if the sprinklers didn't get the body wet, then the murder must have taken place sometime after the sprinklers turned on at 7:30 in the morning.
Which means she must have been killed sometime between then and
This
when
girl
the
was on
body
fire,
was
yeah.
discovered at 9.
Ja.
But Makoto's alibi was only missing from 10 o'clock last night
Ja.
to 7:30 this morning,
Deswegen.
right?
So there's no way Makoto could have
Ja,
done
ach
it.
echt.
I guess you had an alibi after all. Good for you.
In which case, the only one left without an alibi is Kyoko.
Kyoko ist die einzige ohne Alibi. Dann kann Makotos Mörder nur... Nein, ich weigere mich, das zu glauben. Mukuros meine ich übrigens. Kyoko hat jemanden ermordet,
I'd
das
just
ist...
like to say one thing.
Ja.
If you vote for me and I die here, the mystery of this school will stay hidden forever. Which is why I can't let that happen.
Hä?
So are you saying you're not the culprit?
Of course I'm not. I have no reason to kill anyone. This is a trap the mastermind has laid for us.
A trap?
We're this far into the game, and now you decide to blame me? Stop wasting time! Stop wasting energy! You really think your little trick is gonna work?
Shut up, you!
You got it, boss! Shutting up now!
Anyway, Kyoko, you actually did have a reason to kill her.
Huh? She did?
She thought Mukuro was the ultimate despair. In other words, the mastermind behind everything. So she killed her to try and put a stop to all
Dann würde
this.
sie doch nicht einfach
Isn't that
töten. Dann
right,
würde sie
Kyoko?
sagen, hier, guck mal, wir befragen
But
die
you
jetzt.
made one
Folterung
catastrophic
vielleicht,
mistake.
okay, aber...
Mukuro wasn't the
Folterung,
mastermind at
Folter.
all. And as a result, we were forced into another trial.
Ja,
Something
danke,
I'm
war
sure you
verständlich.
weren't at all expecting.
So, that was her motive?
If she had a motive and no alibi, well then, I think it's pretty clear Kyoko's gotta be the culprit.
I'm not the only one without an alibi. Makoto's explanation is still insufficient.
Hä?
Huh?
The sprinklers didn't get the body wet, but that doesn't mean the murder happened when he said it did.
What are you...
Leute, die fällt
Because
mir in den
you
Rücken.
see, there is a way the body could have avoided getting wet.
Interesting. I'm listening.
All it would take is covering the body with a certain something to keep it from getting wet.
Ein spezifischer Gegenstand am Tatort, um die Leiche bedecken zu können. Könnte es sein... Sag mal, hole ich jetzt einen Beweis raus, warum ich sein könnte? Ist das jetzt wirklich... Ist das wirklich jetzt das Ding?
I got it! You're talking about the tarp, aren't you?
You catch on quick.
Wie
You're
schnell du
right.
hinterhergekommen bist.
All
Ich
you
hatte
have
das
to
vor
do
dir
is cover
gefunden, du
the
dumme
body with the
Pute.
tarp, and that'd take care of the water. In fact, that's exactly what the killer did. The dirt pattern on the tarp can attest to that. Only one side of the tarp got dirty, because that's the side that got covered in water. The side that faced down over the body, meanwhile, kept perfectly clean. This proves that the killer used the tarp to keep the body from getting soaked.
But why would they go to all that effort just to keep the body from getting wet?
Most likely so they could cloud the issue of when the murder actually took place.
Ich sag ja, ich war. Sorry, Leute.
In other words, to create an excuse exactly like the one Makoto just gave us.
Sorry, Leute. Ich war's. Warum würde Kyoko das sagen? Immer wenn ich diese Fieberträume habe, dann werde ich plötzlich zum Serienkiller. Ich bin ein bisschen wie Toko. Warum würde sie mich als Killer abstempeln wollen? Nein, darüber denke ich später nach. Diese Plane. Wenn sie so benutzt worden wäre, dann müsste sie den Körper berührt haben, richtig? Allerdings war die Leiche...
Wait,
Warte, etwas stimmt hier nicht. Achso.
something's not right.
And what might that be?
Und dann darf ich Kyokos Hintergedanken keine Beachtung schenken. Wenn ich nichts tue, dann sterben wir alle. Was abweichende Leiche. Oh Gott. Vortex?
By covering the body with the tarp, the killer prevented it from getting wet.
So the reason the tarp was only
Jetzt
dirty on
warte doch
one
mal.
side...
Diese
because
Steuerung
the
ist so
sprinkler got that
scheiße.
side wet.
But the
Alter.
underside of the tarp, it was totally spotless, right?
It's because that side was protected from the water. Since it was facing down toward the body, of course it didn't get dirty.
Hä? Ja, irgendwie nicht. Ja, ich auch nicht. Okay, warte mal. Muss ich jetzt was habe ich denn?
By covering the body with the tarp,
Vor der
the killer
Explosion.
prevented it from getting wet.
So the reason the tarp was only dirty on one side is because the sprinkler got that side wet.
But the underside of the tarp, it was totally spotless, right?
It's because that side was protected from the water. Since it was facing down toward the body, of course it didn't get dirty.
By covering the killer prevents.
So the reason that is because the
Ich bin
but the
verwirrt.
underside of it was totally spotless, right?
It's because that
Side was protected from the water.
Ich weiß gar nicht, was hier passiert. Ja, halt die Klappe. Ich will dich einfach nur schießen. Ich will allem widersprechen, was du sagst, weil du einfach nervst.
By covering the body with the tarp,
The killer prevented it from getting.
So the reason the tarp was is because the sprinkler.
But the underside, it was totally spotless, right?
It's because that
Side was protected from the water.
Shoot!
Ich verstehe langsam auch nicht mehr.
by
Also ich habe
covering the body with the
Leichenanalyse.
tarp, the killer prevented
Oder
it from
meint er mit
getting wet.
Leichenanalyse, dass da
So the reason the tarp was only dirty on one
Blut
side
drauf ist?
is because the sprinkler got that side wet.
But the underside of the tarp, it was totally spotless, right?
It's because that side was protected from the water. Since it was facing down toward the body, of course it didn't get dirty.
Ich glaube, es geht ums Blut, oder?
By covering the body with the
Ich muss
tarp.
jetzt nur überlegen, auf
Killer
was ich
prevented
schieße.
it from getting wet.
So the reason the tarp was only dirty on one side is because the
Ich
sprinkler
könnte
got
halt auf
the
alles
underside
3
of the
rein
tarp, it
theoretisch
was totally
passen. Vielleicht
spotless.
because
natürlich.
that side was protected from the water.
Vielleicht da Blut? Nein, okay. Auf Viro. Ja, das ist wichtig. Das Einzige ist wichtig, dass es auf ihn geht. Ja, man...
By covering the body, the killer prevents.
So the
Ja.
reason that is because the spring, but the underside, it was totally. It's because
That side was protected.
Ja.
since it was facing. Of course, it didn't get dirty.
Oh. Ups. Ein paar Entwickler umbringen. Nö, wir spielen dann das zweite Spiel
The
davon.
killer prevented it.
So the reason the tarp was because the sprinkler.
But the underside of it was
Ich
totally
glaube,
spotless.
Selbstgeißelung ist so ein bisschen mein Ding.
Protected from the water. Since it
auch
was
nicht.
facing down toward the body, of course
It didn't get dirty.
Mann, mach's weg. Wo ich aufnehmen muss. Ich kann es mir nicht vorstellen.
Shoot!
Protected by the water hatte ich doch
By
gerade.
covering the body with the tarp,
The killer prevented it from.
So the reason the tarp was only dirty on one is because the
Das
sprinkler
hatte ich
got.
gerade.
the
Also da bin ich mir
underside, it was
100%ig
totally
sicher.
It's because that side was protected from. Since it was facing down toward. Of course, it didn't get dirty.
Also die Leichenanalyse habe ich jetzt auf beide letzten gemacht.
by covering the body with the tarp, the killer prevented it from getting wet.
Kann ich mir was
So the
einsaugen?
reason the tarp was only dirty on one side is because the sprinkler got that side wet.
But the underside of the tarp, it was totally spotless, right?
It's because that side was protected from the water. Since it was facing down toward the body,
Quarantäne. Also,
of
Protect.
course
Also,
it didn't get dirty.
natürlich wurde sie nicht dreckig. Habe ich die Explosion schon auf? Nein. Ich glaube, ich habe alles schon auf die letzten beiden gemacht, oder?
By covering the body with the
Gleich im
tarp,
Anschluss, klar. Wir spielen heute das Spiel
the killer
durch.
prevented it from getting wet.
So the reason the tarp was only dirty on one side
Okay, ich kann...
is the
Aber gut,
sprinkler
kann
got
ich
that
immer.
side wet.
But the underside of the tarp,
Ich glaube nicht, dass
it
es
was
noch...
totally spotless, right?
It's because that side was protected from the. Since it was facing, of course it didn't get dirty.
By covering the body with the killer
Prevented it from getting.
So the reason the tarp was only dirty on one side is because the sprinkler
Warte,
got that side
Fragmente
wet.
haben, glaube ich,
But
nichts
the
damit
underside
zu
of the
tun.
tarp, it was totally spotless, right?
It's because that
Es macht
side
halt
was
für mich keinen
protected
Sinn.
from the water. Since it was facing down toward the body,
Oh,
of course it didn't
vom
get
Wasser habe ich
dirty.
jetzt einsaugen und auf eine Seite schießen. so wie es aus.
By
Ich bin wirklich
covering the
überfragt
body with
gerade.
the killer prevented it.
So the reason the tarp was only dirt is because the sprinkler got...
But the underside of the tarp, it was totally spotless, right?
It's because that side was protected from the water. Since it was facing down, of course it didn't get dirty.
By
Zieh dies jetzt
covering
einfach
the
da
body
rein,
with
ja.
the tarp, the killer prevented it from getting wet.
So the reason the tarp was only dirty on one side.
Hat auch nicht funktioniert. Ich mach's mal andersrum. Keine Ahnung.
By covering the body with the killer prevented
Oh,
it.
ich hasse
So the
diese
reason
Teile
the tarp
so
was only
sehr.
dirty on is because the sprinkler got that
Oh
side wet.
But the
Mann!
underside, it was totally
It's because that side was protected from... Since it was facing... Of course it didn't get dirty!
Hab ich schon auf...
By covering the body with the tarp, the killer prevented it from getting wet.
So the reason the tarp was only dirty on one side.
Ich bombardiere jetzt auf einer Seite. Von einer Seite.
Shoot!
Ja, Schnauze jetzt. Wir müssen heute dann, glaube
By
ich, das
covering the
nochmal...
body with the tarp, the killer prevented it from getting wet.
So the reason the tarp...
Was only dirty on one side.
Shoot!
By covering the body, the killer prevented it.
So the reason that is because the spring...
But the underside, it was totally
Keine
It's
Ahnung.
because that side was protected. Since it was facing down... Of course it didn't get dirty!
Ich habe wirklich keine Ahnung. Mit das Gameplay. Nein, es ist ja nicht stressig. Es ist einfach nur
By
dumm.
covering the body, the killer prevented.
So the reason that is because the spring...
But the underside, it
Das
was
ist ja gerade
totally
das... Also,
spotless.
It's 'cause
es ist
that
ja nicht
side
so,
was
dass wir
protected
nicht
from the
wissen, was er uns
wall. Since it was
erzählen
facing
möchte.
down to- Of course it didn't get dirty!
Oh, das wollte ich gerade...
No,
Gar nicht.
it's wrong.
Was? Ich dachte, ich hätte mit natürlich alles gemacht.
Actually, one side being clean is pretty strange.
Habe ich
if
das
you
nicht
think
am
about
Anfang
it.
gemacht? Habe ich das nicht am Anfang gemacht? Ich dachte auch. Okay. Gut, dann macht es auch Sinn, warum ich überfragt war, weil ich scheinbar irgendwas nicht gemacht habe, was ich dachte gemacht zu haben. Es ist wieder abgeprallt. Ich erkenne das meistens nicht, wenn es abprallt. Ich ignoriere meistens, wenn es abprallt.
Because the
War jetzt
blood
unnötig,
wasn't
aber
dry
hey.
before the body got blown up, right?
Du musst ja klar. Natürlich,
Yakuya
Dominik,
said it
natürlich.
himself. Not to touch it, or you might get some on you. If you put a tarp on a body in that state, it absolutely would have gotten blood on it.
Well,
Lass
maybe
uns
the
reinschauen.
culprit washed it, so nobody would know they'd used it.
If they had, they would have washed both sides. Just washing the one side wouldn't hide anything.
Oh, yeah, true.
More than that, what if the very blood we saw on the body was meant as a kind of camouflage?
Alter, sie hasst mich, oder? Hä? Das Blut war eine Ablenkung?
What if, after the killer used the tarp to avoid the sprinklers, they then covered the body in blood that didn't belong to the victim?
You mean someone else's blood? Where would they get something like that?
I know! They could have grabbed some of the blood packs from the nurse's office. That's what Hifumi did, right? When he pretended to be dead?
Oh, heilige Bimmerkatze, tue ich ja auch.
No, that's not what happened this time. The killer got the blood from right there in the garden.
Irgendwie muss das Blut aus dem Garten gekommen sein. Was?
I got it! Could it have been
Bock, bock.
chicken blood?
What? Chicken blood?
When I checked the chicken coop before the murder, there were 5 chickens.
Naja, wenigstens hat sie da noch ein Chicken Dinner draus gemacht. Das ist okay. War gut
But
verwertet
after the
wenigstens.
murder, there were only 4.
So, you're saying someone killed a chicken? And then covered the body with its blood?
Wisst ihr, was ich immer noch so lustig finde? In jedem Spiel, Nein, wie konnte das nur der Taube angetan werden? Wie konnte das nur der Katze, dem Hund, dem Bock, dem Elefanten, dem Pferd? Aber die 1000 Millionen Menschen, die in irgendwelchen Spielen die ganze Zeit sterben, die sind egal. Aber wehe, ein virtueller Hund stirbt.
Man, that's messed up.
Killing a living thing just to do something like that is awful. They should have at least eaten it.
I wonder if the killer had to get the blood from the scene so they wouldn't be spotted walking around. Anyway, there's no denying that a chicken went missing, which provides a basis for my theory.
Perhaps, but even so, there's one thing that still doesn't make sense.
Ja, was denn?
You said the culprit used the tarp to avoid the water and then covered the body in blood, right?
Verstehe dein Problem nicht.
But if that's the case, then the blood should have soaked into the ground around the
Das ist
body.
nur eine Feststellung. Bin ja genauso.
But that's not what we saw. Only the victim's clothing had blood on it. The ground was completely clean.
I have to agree, that certainly is strange. Maybe they didn't apply the blood at the scene. Maybe they covered the coat in blood beforehand.
They covered it beforehand?
When you discovered the body, was it wearing the coat like you normally would?
I think so.
Keiner weiß doch, wow.
Wait, no. The head was through the neck hole, but the arms weren't in the sleeves.
Hä, normal, so trage ich den immer.
Then that settles it.
Sorry, I'm having a tough time keeping up. What settles what?
Here's what happened. The murder took place before the sprinklers went off. But the body didn't get wet because the killer covered it with the tarp. Then, later, at the same time the killer was gathering up the tarp, they pulled the coat over the body, the coat they'd already covered in blood. This series of cover-ups was meant to disguise the actual time the murder
Ja, ich kann
occurred.
das. Weißt du, BHs üben und so.
They wanted us to think the murder happened sometime after the sprinklers had gone off, at 7:30.
If that's actually what took place, it certainly becomes possible that the murder happened earlier.
But to pull all that off, wouldn't they have had to go back to the garden after the sprinklers turned off?
That actually wouldn't have been all that difficult.
Huh?
They already had the coat ready, so they just had to grab the tarp and pull the coat over the body. They'd be done in no time.
Maybe, but still.
Hina, after you met up with Makoto in the dining hall, did you two stay together from that point on?
Oh no. I headed off to the gym, and Makoto didn't show up till later.
Ich bin gebeamt, du bist gelaufen. Wie sollst du denn bitte schneller
Then he
gewesen
had plenty
sein?
of time to spare, wouldn't you say?
Sag mal,
That's
Kyoko.
not...
Don't bother saying it's not possible.
I must admit, Kyoko's reasoning is sound. Makoto's alibi is inadequate.
Und erneut fällt der Verdacht wieder auf mich. Aber warum? Warum möchte mir Kyoko Schuld geben? Ich verstehe es einfach nicht. Blöde Kuh, echt. Finte!
Well then, it looks like we're back to square one.
Ultimative Schwimmerin und so.
Makoto's alibi
Ja.
is no good, so once again, our
kann
suspects
sie da
are
auch
him
hochschwimmen.
and Kyoko.
Toll.
For serious, man? Which one of them did it? Hey, why don't we let luck decide? Let's flip a coin. 50-50 odds.
Oh!
See? Pretty good idea, right?
No, not that. I just remembered something super serious.
Ich finde das ungerecht.
Well, don't just stand there. Out with it.
You know that knife we found all black and burnt?
The one we found stuck in the body before it exploded, right? According to the Monokuma file, the knife went all the way through, from front to back. So, what about it?
I'm pretty sure I'd seen that knife somewhere before.
Aber bevor du sagst, ich hatte es nicht mehr. Ich
That's
hatte
what
das
I
da gar
thought when
nicht.
I first saw it.
Nee, nee, ich hatte das da
I
gar
just
nicht mehr.
remembered.
Fint ins Korn werfen, ey. Viel wichtiger. Was wird jetzt mit dem Ding geschehen? Wir können es nicht bei Toko lassen, das ist klar. Keine Ahnung, was sie damit tun würde. Also, ich will es sowieso nicht. Was tun? Warum behältst du es nicht, Makoto? Was, ich?
It's the knife we gave to Makoto?
Ich war es aber
You don't
nicht.
seem surprised. You must have noticed earlier.
Yeah.
Then why did you hide that fact?
It's not that I hid it. It's just...
Ich konnte nicht sicher sein bezüglich letzter Nacht. Vielleicht hatte ich sie tatsächlich getötet, das dachte ich zumindest.
Suspicious. Very suspicious indeed. The knife we found stuck in the body came from Makoto. Now I'm totally convinced he did it. 12,000% convinced.
Irgendwie muss das möglich sein. Wie bloß wie? Kann ich endlich meinen Namen reinwaschen? Mit Bleichmittel. Ein blindes Huhn findet auch mal. Was ist denn? Aus
The
jetzt.
knife we found lodged in the dead body.
Bestimmtes Ablenkungsmanöver.
same one we gave to Makoto. It really is, isn't it? I was afraid of that.
If he did have that knife before, then that seals it. Makoto did it.
Just because I had the knife once, that automatically makes me the killer?
Well, getting stabbed is what killed her, right? So there's no question. You took that knife of yours and killed her with it.
What a horrible man you are,
Es sind
Makoto.
nur 2 davon. Das ist jetzt, also, eigentlich kann ich damit nicht, also... Was hatten wir vorher erkannt, dass der Killer vielleicht ist? Dann haben sie das vergessen.
The knife we found lodged... It's the same one we gave to Makoto. It really is, isn't it?
Ist das Ablenkungsmanöver
If he
das, was
did
ich
have
mit ihr
that knife
gemacht habe?
before, then that
Oder-
seals it. Makoto did it.
Just because I had the knife,
Oder
that
ist es
automatically makes...
die Finte?
Getting stabbed is what
Killed her, right?
Das
No,
ist scheinbar die
it's wrong.
Finte. Oder? Durchbruch.
Wait, hold on. The stab wound isn't what killed
Okay,
Mukuro.
Finte. Ich dachte gerade, es geht um das Ablenkungsmanöver, was ich mit Kyoko gemacht habe. Von wegen, es hätte gar kein anderer ans Messer kommen können. So.
That should be clear from the
Gute Nacht, Lemmy,
description of
schönes
the
Wochenende.
cover-up we just heard.
Lies! We never talked about what killed her.
No, don't you remember? The killer covered the dead body with the tarp and then put the bloody coat on it, right? In other words, the victim never wore that blood-stained coat until after they were dead.
Okay, fine. So what?
So, when we discovered the body, the knife had been thrust through the coat along with the body. Meaning, if she wasn't stabbed until the coat was put on, and she was already dead at that point, obviously the stab wound isn't what killed her.
Maybe you stabbed her twice. Once to kill her and once to cover it up.
Bestimmt. Das klingt nach mir. Das Opfer wurde zweimal an der gleichen Stelle verletzt? Nein, niemals könnte das stimmen. Ich habe Beweise. Eigentlich sollte das jeder wissen. Ja, eigentlich müssen wir doch... Also, eigentlich geht nur... Warte, was war seine Aussage? Nein, eigentlich geht nur das.
I got it! The Monokuma file clearly states that there was only one stab wound.
Oh yeah, it sure did. I totally forgot about that.
Oh,
And
no.
the knife...
Was just another piece of camouflage set up by the true killer. They probably stabbed her to draw attention away from what actually killed her. Exploding the body afterward was probably meant to do the same thing.
I believe I can fly.
The explosion severely damaged the body, making it impossible to know what really killed her. It was
Locker.
all the killer's attempt to destroy all evidence of their crime.
So they wanted us to notice the stab wound and then detonated the body afterward. They meant for us to latch onto the knife as the cause of death, then destroy any evidence proving otherwise.
Oh, hey, I have a question.
Ja.
It kind of goes back to the beginning, but... what's the deal with that explosion anyway? Why'd the body just blow up all of a sudden like that?
If you bothered to put that lump of gray matter between your ears to use, you'd know the answer.
Well, if you're so smart, just tell me.
I'll tell you. I bet some unknown quantum particle caused an atomic-level spontaneous combustion!
I might be dumb, but even I'm not dumb enough to believe that.
Go ahead, Makoto. Tell her or we won't make any headway on this.
Ich habe noch eine Erklärung, die mir wegen der Explosion einfällt. Eigentlich ist es ziemlich einfach.
I got it! After the explosion, we found a tiny fragment of something on the ground near the body, right? That fragment reveals the cause of the explosion.
Huh? You know, I feel like I've seen something like it somewhere before.
That's only natural, because of course, we saw the same thing when we dismantled Monokuma. It's part of a bomb